All right, good afternoon, everybody. We will go ahead and get started. My name is Abby Jung. I'm the Director of Education at the Durham Museum, and I would love to welcome you to today's virtual event featuring Dr. Monique Chism. We are so grateful you all could join us, and we are honored to be hosting Dr. Chism on the first day of Teachers Week 2022. Before we begin, I do want to remind everyone that Teachers Week will culminate with our 19th annual Teachers Night this Friday, October 7th from 4 to 7 p.m. We have 50 exhibitors lined up, which is amazing, including the Smithsonian themselves, who are joining us all the way from Washington, D.C. to help celebrate our 20th anniversary this year as a Smithsonian affiliate. In addition to receiving this year's Teachers Night bag and your choice of giveaways, teachers will enjoy raffle prizes, complimentary hot dog and hamburger meals from Hy-Vee, and of course, a chance to see Dressing the Abbey, which is our fall exhibition. It's not too late to register, and if you have already, we hope you'll encourage your colleagues to sign up and attend with you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our very special guest for today. As the Undersecretary for Education at the Smithsonian, Dr. Monique Chism is responsible for defining the institution's educational priorities. She oversees the Smithsonian's collective initiatives, communication strategies, and funding for programs that benefit learners of all ages. Previously, Dr. Chism was the Vice President for Education Policy and Strategic Initiatives at the American Institute for Research and has also worked for the U.S. Department of Education. She holds bachelor's degrees from Ohio University and a master's degree from Central Michigan University, both in interpersonal and public communication, as well as a doctorate from Michigan State University in American Studies. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Monique Chism to Teachers Week 2022.
Thank you, Abby, and thank you so much. I first want to say thank you to the museum, but especially to you for the invitation to talk tonight to the teachers. And also want to congratulate you on 20 years of being a Smithsonian affiliate. We really appreciate the collaboration and the strong partnership that we have together. And thank you so much for all that you do in that area and in the region. And really happy that we can be a collaborator with you. I also want to just echo Abby and say, if you are attending the Teachers Night on Friday, make sure to check out the Smithsonian Corner. My colleagues have been working hard and we have pulled together resources from over 15 different museums from across the Smithsonian. And you can find things like posters and bookmarks and card games and sketchbooks and books, a whole plethora of things, tote bags. And also we offered a special door prize. So make sure to check out Teachers Night this Friday. And I also want to say that you'll have an opportunity to meet my colleague, Erin Glavis, who will be there in person and can help answer any questions or point you back to the right resource here if you have additional resource needs that you need. I also just want to start off by saying thank you to all of the educators. I was a teacher for 8 years and have worked in the field of education for my entire life. So I might be a little biased, but I think that there is no more singular important role than that of a teacher. And I say this with a full heavy heart to say that, accepting the title of educator or teacher carries significant responsibility. And so I have great admiration and love for teachers who around the world, year after year, say yes to continuing in this profession and making sure that we can continue. Educators, I think, do the most important job of helping us develop that curiosity. They help us discover and dream and ultimately believe in ourselves so that we can become the best version of ourselves, which ultimately helps the nation become the best version of itself. So just my hats off and special thank you to all of the educators and teachers participating in this event. So as Abby mentioned, I have been in education my entire life. I started off as a teacher and then went to a nonprofit organization. I was then at the Illinois State Board of Education for a little while, and then the U.S. Department of Education. And just about a little over a year ago, I joined the Smithsonian as the Undersecretary for Education. And I have to say that being here, just even in this short period of time, has just totally re-energized me and made me remember why I fell in love with being an educator in the first place. The Smithsonian's mission is the increase and diffusion of knowledge. And so education has been at our core since we were founded over 175 years ago. Many of you probably already know this, but I didn't realize this when I came to the Smithsonian, that there are over 21 museums. That includes our two newest museums, the National Museum of the American Latino and the National Women's History Museum, which are not physically in place yet, but have started programming and outreach efforts. We also have our libraries. We have over 21 libraries. We have the National Zoo. And then in addition to that, we have several science centers across the nation. Even one in Panama, our Tropical Research Center in Panama. So we have a little bit of everything to help to satisfy any professional development or resource needs that teachers might have. We are actually the world's largest museum, education, and research complex. And we have over 300 passionate educators that stand ready to help and support educators across the nation. Just some quick information about the Smithsonian Education Outreach. On an annual basis, we reach about 9.7 million participants in our education programs. We have many different types of publications that help to share information about our programming, resources, materials. We also have a science curriculum, which I'm not sure many people know about, but it's aligned to the next generation science standards. And we currently are working with about 7.8 million students across the nation. We have over 213 affiliates. The Durham Museum is one of our favorites. And we're reaching about 30 million visitors each year through our affiliates. And then we also have the great opportunity to have traveling exhibits that reach about 151 venues each year. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we have about 3,600 academic appointments, about 1,400 interns, 750 fellows each year, and about 1,100 research associates. So if you know individuals who are looking for opportunities for internships, fellowships, and research associates, please do connect with us and we can point them in the right direction. So I have the great pleasure of working with Secretary Lonnie Bunch, who is the founding director of the African American History and Culture Museum, and has been serving as secretary for the Smithsonian for several years now, 3 or 4 years. And Secretary Bunch, what I think I appreciate most about him is that he really does believe that collectively we can change the world. And so he has established this overarching umbrella for us to organize ourselves around called Our Shared Future, and has really defined 4 key areas in the Our Shared Future initiative. The first one, Life on a Sustainable Planet, really focuses on the environment, sustainability, conservation, and many different aspects of that. There's also a lens that focuses specifically on reckoning with our racial past and having conversations and dialogue to really have the conversations we need to have as a nation to move forward and heal, but also to celebrate the inclusive stories and the accomplishments of many Americans across history. We have a specific focus on women's history and uplifting the stories of women and their contributions in, government, sports, politics, workforce, all different aspects of life. And then finally, our newest initiative is focused on connecting and listening and being of service to rural communities across the nation. So we have organized our work under this umbrella of Our Shared Future. Specifically in education, we are really focused on 6 strategic areas. I won't go through all of them, but the ones that might resonate in particular for you is that we have set a goal to reach every classroom in the nation. And so we want to hear from teachers about what does this look like in a meaningful way so that we can connect with you and make sure that it's having relevance and impact for the work that you're doing every day in the classroom. We also have a focus on STEAM education and really upgrading our efforts to have a digital touch with every classroom, home, student, family, so that our digital resources are more accessible. I already mentioned our role initiative, but we also are focusing on our internships and fellowships to make sure that all of our internship experiences are paid experiences, because we know that that's a key factor for some students being able to participate or not participate in an internship experience. So these are the areas where we're focusing our education efforts. One of our kind of most useful tools in the digital outreach is our Smithsonian Learning Lab. And we will pop a link into the chat box so that you have that available for you. But this is a wonderful resource that gives you access to our collections, wonderful kind of curated lessons on a number of different topics, and can be used solely by a teacher or an educator, or can also be utilized for students to have self-directed experiences. So I encourage everyone to check out the Smithsonian Learning Lab as a way to get access to our instructional content. I'm really happy to say that last year, we started a collaboration with the Nebraska Department of Education, and the Nebraska Department of Education came to the Smithsonian and shared that they were really starting to think about their social studies standards and also their multicultural education standards, and wanted to see if we could work together to design learning modules that would be available for all teachers across the state. So we worked with, I can't remember if it's 10 or 12, but a number of Nebraska educators. And then we also paired them with Smithsonian educators. We worked together for about 4 months. We took classes together to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and inclusive stories. We worked together to design modules. Our team from the Smithsonian went to Omaha, Nebraska to meet with the teachers. And then the teachers came to DC for a further professional learning opportunity. And I'm happy to say that they have developed 5 learning modules, which are available to all of you through the Learning Lab, and we'll share the link for that. And really what you'll see here is that, and the focus was on early learners. So this was pre-K through 3rd grade. And we have created a helpful user's guide so that you can understand how the modules are organized. But you'll see that these are things that you could probably take tomorrow and use in your classroom. So there's a module that focuses on how can family celebrations and traditions be the same or different. And really with all of these, what we did was focus on inclusive stories, joyful opportunities to have incorporation of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so in thinking about using these, please just reach out if you have any questions, but they're all centered around the Nebraska social studies standards and also the state's multicultural requirements, multicultural education requirements. Teachers that were part of this engagement are actually piloting these lessons right now in their classrooms. We will then go back and modify and adjust, and then they will be available on the Nebraska platform and also continue to be available on Learning Lab. So please do check those out. I wanted to share a couple of other resources that are available that you might find of interest. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the focus areas for our shared future is on women's history. And the Women's History Initiative here at the Smithsonian has taken the time to create what they have called discussion guides. And they are on a number of different areas that relate to activism, sports, politics, workforce. But it provides a guide that will support teachers through using different pieces of artwork. It might include different objects from our collections, that they have guiding questions. All of these are aligned to the Common Core state standards and also C3 standards. And so they're really meant to be kind of ready to go resources. And you'll see here that we have a variety of discussion guides that range from stories about Native women and civic action, and also stories about women who were part of the land army during World War II. Also, favorite story about Bessie Coleman, as you're thinking about science and air and space and all of those things. So please do check those out. I think you'll find them valuable. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that as part of our effort to reach students across the nation, to really reach students beyond the DC Capital Region, we are forming partnerships with organizations like the Boys and Girls Club and 4-H, and hopefully many more to come, and really thinking through this carefully in a number of different ways to have a tiered experience and engagement. And so the first opportunity that we're presenting is kind of a universal access to resources by sharing information on both of our platforms. So 4-H has a digital platform. We have our learning lab. We will share resources in both places that students and 4-H mentors and advisors can access. The second level is that 4-H brings students to DC throughout the year. Their kind of biggest engagement is during the summer, where they bring about 1,600 students over the course of 8 weeks to DC for a leadership experience. And last year was the first year that we actually structured a curated experience at the Smithsonian for the 4-H students, which I'm really excited about. The theme was around democracy. The students had a chance to go through our museums, oftentimes for a private tour, to really engage with the artifacts, the artwork, the objects, all around this theme of democracy. And then we didn't want it to end there, because we know that learning is a continuous process, and often when you have an opportunity for place-based or project-based opportunities, that's when the learning sticks. And so the third part of this engagement is focused on our Museum on Main Street model, where students will go back to their communities and really identify a question or a challenge or a problem that might be present in their community around, again, that theme of democracy. And they will start to develop action plans. And through the development of that action plan, one of their deliverables is a presentation to the community. So they might do a podcast or a video or even an exhibit and share that with their local communities in hope of energizing people around that topic so that they can help to identify solutions. And so I mentioned this just because 4-H has a chapter in every county in the nation. And so if you're thinking about ways in which students can get engaged and connected, we'd love for you to kind of support and recommend to them that they think about joining the participation with 4-H that the Smithsonian has. The other resource that I wanted to mention is a really dynamic resource that combines a focus on helping to centralize women as scientists. Too often, young girls don't see themselves as scientists or kind of aren't represented in the STEM disciplines or professions in a way that that we need them to be. And so we've taken a very direct and focused effort to help to demonstrate that yes, women are scientists and they come in all different shapes, forms, and packages. And so this series, there's 3 of them right now, is coupled with a webinar that takes you kind of through the resources. It also has personal biographies on each one of the scientists from the Smithsonian. And then what you see is interactive games. And so students can immerse themselves in the ocean and really understand more about the environment, sustainability, and how all the different organisms that are in the ocean kind of interact. There's also this wonderful predator versus prey activity and an opportunity to go through an exploded star, so a space journey. And they're very interactive and engaging activities for students, but then there's a lot of wraparound resources for teachers. And finally, the last thing that I wanted to mention is that we have placed a very important priority on making sure that we're reaching students who are either in high school, college, recently graduated from college, or looking for fellowship opportunities. And our internship program is one of the ways in which we do that. So last year we had a chance to collaborate with the Emerson Collective, and we're going to do that again this year. And we'll share information about the call when that goes out. But we hosted 100 interns, and 50 of them were here in DC, and then 50 of them were placed in our affiliates across the nation. And I believe the Durham Museum was one of our placements. And so students had an opportunity to have an 8-week immersive learning opportunity. And they really had the opportunity to explore topics related to women's history, racial justice, and climate change. And so we have about 1,500 to 1,700 interns a year. And so if you have young people that you know would be good candidates for internships, please connect with us, because we'd love to get them into the application process. I feel like, Abby, I raced through that very quickly, but it looks like we have a couple of minutes left. So maybe we have some time for questions if there's any questions.
I actually had one to kick us off, if that's okay.
That sounds good.
Something I always love to ask folks that work, especially in, I don't know, however you want to say, non-traditional education roles, like museums. What do you see as maybe a big challenge or opportunity, if you want to think of it that way, kind of facing educators today? And some of related to some of the work that the Smithsonian is doing.
It's a great question. Am I still sharing the screen or no? It's stopped.
It's stopped.
Okay, great. So the question was really like, what is the big challenge for museum educators in connecting with teachers? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the first challenge is not all teachers recognize that museums are a really valuable resource to support their instructional needs. I think for those of us who might have grown up going to museums, that seems like a natural kind of connection. But for others, they might not even know that their local museum or the Smithsonian can serve as a valuable partner. I think that's the first hurdle. The second is that often I think as teachers, there's so many different things that are coming at you, from the school level, the district level, perhaps the state and federal level, families, community members, that it's probably when you have that 20 minutes of free time you're not thinking of going to your museum website to look for additional education support and resources. And so I think as museum educators, we have a charge, we have a responsibility to make sure that we are customizing the things that we're providing to the needs that educators have. And so I know here at the Smithsonian, that's one of the things that we're really focused on and thinking through very carefully in conversation with teachers, so that we're not just building it for ourselves and thinking that people will come, but we're actually designing it with teachers in mind. And you're gonna hear my dog in the background because she's very impatient with me right now. So I apologize. I guess the last thing that I would say is that, we have been in close conversation with teachers across the nation, and many of them are sharing that they are facing challenges right now because of state laws that are passing that are prohibiting the teaching of certain content, often content related to race and racism, or gender and sexism, or even identity and gender identity. And so one of the ways that the Smithsonian has been trying to help to support educators is really a focus on inclusive stories, professional development that supports teachers in these areas, and ways in which to tell holistic stories that don't always have to be negative stories. And I'll just very quickly provide an example. So when we think about air and space, we often think about Neil Armstrong, which is great, a great American hero. But there were so many other aspects that made the launch to the moon possible. Part of this was through the work of the seamstress, who helped to be very innovative in the way in which they designed the spacesuits so that the astronauts would survive. Another part of this is from the human calculators, the women who actually did the math and the calculus to help make sure that the path was correct and the space shuttle wouldn't explode. By telling the stories of these women, it doesn't take anything away from Neil Armstrong. It just tells a more inclusive story. And so at the Smithsonian, we're really working hard on supporting educators and telling those inclusive stories.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with us here at the Durham. Talking about the first part and how if you didn't grow up going to museums, that might not be your go-to thought. I always like to describe it as, I think for a lot of educators, there's so many things. I also used to be a teacher. To say that you're juggling so many things is a terrible understatement. But I think often museums are maybe thought of as a nice to have. And I think those of us working in museums, we want to be a need to have, for your curriculum. So I think the Smithsonian definitely goes a long way in helping affiliates do that as well. Fun question in the chat. Do you have a favorite collection or exhibit at the Smithsonian since you've started there? I'm sure it's hard to pick just one.
It is hard to pick just one. So I'll share two. I don't have a favorite, but American History, our National Museum of American History, has an exhibit called Girlhood, which I think is about to close and travel. But it's really a dynamic experience that kind of intersects all aspects of being a girl, being a woman, through many different aspects of life. So I really enjoyed that one. And then there's an exhibit at the National Museum of the African American History and Culture called Reckoning. And I literally can't go into that gallery without crying. So it's a very emotional experience for me. And if you have an opportunity to get to DC and see that, that would be, I think, amazing for everybody. But my favorite event at the Smithsonian is the National Education Summit, which happens in July. And we're happy to share information about the summit because it's a wonderful experience for everyone.
Fantastic. Well, that does put us at the end of our time. I'm so grateful for those watching, and we are recording this, so we'll get this posted on our Teachers Week website so more people can enjoy it afterwards. We hope you can join us at Teachers Night And like Dr. Chisholm said, we have that Smithsonian corner with our Smithsonian table, and also a little shout out to the other two Smithsonian affiliates in Nebraska. So the Strategic Air and Space Museum will be there, as well as Morrill Hall out of Lincoln. So very excited to celebrate with you all on Friday. Thank you again, Dr. Chisholm, for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.